Welcome into Wager Talk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Bryan, Leonard, and Tony Mejia of WagerTalk.com as we're talking college football in the Big 12. Bryan, coming to you first. We get Kansas State and TCU, 8 p.m. Eastern primetime game here. We're seeing Texas Christian minus 3.5-point home favorites, 55 being the total. Are you liking anything in Fort Worth Saturday night, Bryan?
If you are a spot player, I think you're involved in this game, and that would be on Kansas State. Just a terrific spot for Kansas State. They had last week off, whereas TCU has now played four very good opponents in those games, four in a row. Three of the games were really tight. The other was a blowout out of Oklahoma. And as we saw last week, everybody talked about the death of Oklahoma. Well, maybe they're not quite dead yet. It's so tough to get up week in and week out in college football. And you take a look at what TCU's gone through. They got the big coach's revenge against SMU. They've got Kansas they played. Kansas is a team that everybody's looking to play. So they've got 4 straight weeks of real intense college football. Now they're playing a Kansas State team who hasn't played in 2 weeks, hasn't been in the main focus. I look at the top of this Big 12. I've got just about 4 or 5 teams all rated within a couple of points of each other. This is anybody's conference here. And we take a look at Chris Kleiman. He's played TCU since he came over to Manhattan. Perfect 3-0 in those games. Kansas State has always had that ability because of their defense to slow down good offensive teams. We've seen their success against Oklahoma in the past. Now they're playing a TCU team who's just been fantastic offensively. The quarterback should be up there for the Heisman voting. But I think Kansas State, with the way they match up here against TCU, catching over a field goal in many places, I like the Kansas State side here.
Good stuff, Bryan. Tony, coming to you next. To Bryan's point, it's tough to get up this many games in a row. Laying 3.5, they're going to have to win by a little bit of margin, speaking towards the TCU side. And Kansas State coming in, chomping at the bit. What are you liking in Fort Worth Saturday night, Tony?
Yeah, college football schedules are made, basically a decade in advance. So Sonny Dykes has no control over it, but I can imagine his reaction when he sees it after Colorado and the tough game against Tarleton State. His team gets the only bye week that they'll see all year, and then you come back with SMU, Oklahoma, a Kansas team that's actually good, and Oklahoma State. I was on the Horned Frogs for most of those games. The Kansas game ended up being a push, unless you got the 6.5 early, but all of them have been really tough games outside of the Oklahoma game, which they dominated, and it kind of helped that Dylan Gabriel was out of that mix early, and they were able to really take the Sooners to the woodshed, scored 55 points. They were down 14-0 and basically down the entire game against the Cowboys last week. But utilized that home field advantage, and not to mention the defense actually showed up to the point where they were able to hold the Cowboys to 32 yards in the fourth quarter and making that comeback. So we'll see if they can carry that over, but Bryan's absolutely spot on in terms of spot. This is a Kansas State spot. Coming off a bye, they were able to give guys like Nate Matlack the entire week off. Now he's going to be able to play. The linebacker Khalid Duke is also in, so a stingy Kansas State defense comes in fresh. Really like Max Duggan. His ability to be a dual threat for TCU has made all the difference. And he won a really contested quarterback battle in the offseason. So Dykes obviously made the right choice in riding with Duggan. They're undefeated. They're in the top 10. But this is a game I'm going to stay away from. And I won't even jump on the Kansas State side because Adrian Martinez is yet to throw an interception this season, and that's bound to change at some point. So the one thing that will also keep me off of TCU is that Kleiman is very good in an underdog role, 10-5 in his career at Kansas State. Won his only game as an underdog this season, and is 3-0 with 2 underdog wins against TCU. Although the Horned Frogs had fallen off the entire time that Kleiman has been in Manhattan, 23-24 over the last 4 seasons, now 6-0 under Dykes. This is one of those games definitely to monitor because it's a big one in the Big 12 and in the college football landscape. But as far as having action on it, I'll pass. So, good luck to everybody in what you choose.
Absolutely, guys. Enjoy the game Saturday night. You just heard there from Tony Mejia and Bryan Leonard. Check them both out, wagertalk.com. A good day to do so is Mondays, $9 Mondays. All plays from all handicappers discounted to just $9. Check it out, wagertalk.com.